I just say this is really, 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 really powerful. I love it. Well done.
Welcome to another episode of Becoming Creative. Shout out to everybody and all the love and feedback on the pilot episode. If you are just joining and know nothing about this and you came upon this, there is a pilot episode of this. And so I encourage you to go back to episode 1 and listen to that. It kind of gives some context on... It gives context on what Becoming Creative is and how it came to be, why we're here. It's a pretty much a why. So if you are just joining in and hearing this, please go to the pilot. I think it's a really good I think it's a really good episode. And I think even for myself sometimes, kind of recounting how I got to where I am today is helpful for me because it reminds me of where I've been, and it reminds me, of course, of like what God is doing and how He has empowered me to kind of overcome different challenges to get to where I am today. And not only that, it shows me that He can also do it more and more in a lot of different things that may come up in the future. So I'm grateful for that. And so yeah, if you haven't heard it, please do go back, listen to the previous episodes. Not only that, I'm still getting in the swing of what this is, and so please do subscribe on YouTube to the channel. If you're listening to this, there's also a visual to this podcast, and please go over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, give me a thumb up. Talk to me in the comments, please. I want this to be a conversation. I want this to be a space where we are creating together. And I was playing a audio note earlier, or in the beginning of this. And this episode, I kind of want to talk about what was said in the audio note. And that is talking about this message is strictly for creatives. So I'll start that at the beginning of this thing. Personally, I view everyone as a creative. So this message and whatever I speak on today is for you. You know, don't feel like I'm not a creative. Let me turn this off. Tune in. Just keep it on. All right. Let's talk about the creative and the Christian. The creative and the Christian. I fall in that category. And it is very interesting to think that as a creative, generally the idea is that you have all of this freedom, all of this liberty to kind of do whatever you feel like doing. Because art, creativity, and all of the mediums used for that are ways for us to express how we feel, express what we're going through, express what we see, how we're viewing the world at the time. Like, it's used as a mode of expression, right? And so as a Christian creative, there are some boundaries that I've learned that I need to set, and I need to even be better about respecting those boundaries. As a creative, I do freelance work. So I do photography, I do web design, I do logo design, as well as graphic design. So flyers, promotion packets, all these different things. And so, you know, I have a lot of different people asking me to do work for them. And there is, like my friend said, there's a gray line because just to kind of go back a little bit, when I first started to do work for folk and freelance, I was calling my business or whatever I was working on, I was calling it water to wine. And my whole idea was like, oh my God, yeah, I can take people's ideas and I can kind of like transform them and create it to be what they want it to be, right? And I was like, oh, like that could be like my whole little thing. Like I take an idea and I just kind of make it into this unique thing and then boom, 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 right? Which is great. I think I was able to achieve that. But in doing that, I've definitely got a lot more clients that aren't Christian, aren't believers, right? And so everyone has a cause, everyone has a thing that they are passionate about or have their own ideologies. And as I started to get clients, I had to kind of think about what these clients, one, wanted, but two, where was it coming from? And I think that's something for all of us, no matter what career path you're in. I think ultimately you should definitely think about how what you're doing falls in line with like your beliefs and what you really stand firm on. Because clearly as a Christian, right, I'm not going to take a job that says, hey, I want to make a site where I don't know, posting pornographic images, right? Like, I'm clearly not going to do that. Or, you know, oh, I do music. Can you do this music website for me or whatever? But then like your music is just like completely against what I believe. Like all types of, just all types of muck on that joint. Like there's a line where I, as a creative, I have to set a boundary for myself, because I'm a believer of whatever I put my hands to, I want God to be in it. Every time I start a project, one of the first things I say is, Lord, guide my creativity as I do this thing. Show me what to do. Show me what it's supposed to look like. Lord, use my creativity in the way you want me to use it. And if I'm praying that prayer over every project that I do, and then the project itself is just completely against the will of the Lord, like it's blatant that it's against it, well then, you know, as a creative, it makes me feel uneasy, not only in the product, right, but also in the process. Like then the way I communicate with my client, like that matters. It shows up in those interactions, because now my ideas versus their ideas are not, they're not making sense. They're not lining up. And so, I think ultimately, like, whenever you are creating, whatever you're doing as a Christian, there's this obligation to like have witness. Like you got to still be a witness in what you're creating and how you're creating, because then like when whatever you create and whatever you put your name to is kind of out there and people are looking at it, your name is going to follow that. You know what I mean? Like, just turning this down a little bit. Sorry for those listening. But ultimately, like your word, your name follows. It follows you. Your name and what is attached to your name is going to follow you in your creative career. And so I know for myself, I've definitely had to rethink some things. And, you know, I can even speak candidly about a client I have now where it's not so blatant, where it's like we're on two different spectrums. But in their rationale of like either why something may not be working in the moment, or let's hold this, let's table this for a moment because something else is going on in the universe or whatever. And it's no shot to the person, but it's like you just want to make sure as a creative that you are, as a Christian creative, that what you're doing lines up with what you believe. And it goes back to the idea of like, whatever I make, whatever I create, God gave me this creativity. God allows me to use it. Will God be pleased in how I'm using it? It's just what it is. Even if I'm a dancer, can he be pleased in the way now I use my body to articulate my faith and to articulate my worship for him? Will he be pleased? Like, clearly, if I'm popping my back and doing all this stuff, I can't do that in his name. It's like it's a blatant, like, you just know. And it's kind of like what does that do to the witness? What does that do to folks who are looking in and saying, well, what's so different about what you're doing as a creative, as an artist, versus me, who I'm doing it as a non-believer? Like, what's the difference? And I feel like, to be quite honest, in the clients that I've had where I'm like, Lord, use my creativity and be in this whole situation, I've seen those businesses flourish. I've seen fruit from the clients that I've taken on and felt like the Lord was really allowing me to do a great work for them through through God. I've seen fruit. Like, I've seen those businesses grow. I've seen events be successful. You know what I mean? And thankfully, I haven't had many, if really even one experience in seeing that, like, dang, like, this product didn't really fall in line with what I believe. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't necessarily had that experience, but I think the thought does weigh on a creative in having to navigate that space. And you really do have to guard, like, where you use your gifts. To be honest, like, you really have to be led with how you use them and then where. And I think that's kind of with anything. It's not just like, I don't think it's just like with creatives. I think that idea falls in line with so many other career paths. Like, anything can lead for an opportunity to compromise if you are not holding true to what you believe. And if you are a Christian creative, you really have to hold on to your beliefs. Like, you have to hold on to the fact that your creativity and the way you're using it, it already has a function. It already was given to you and ordained to work in a particular way, in a particular place. And if you then use that in a space that is not giving glory to God, you're using it in a space where it's directly conflicting with who you are. Not only, one, are you corrupting that gift? Let's talk about that. You are tainting it, but also you're leaving yourself open. And now you're leaving yourself vulnerable to kind of be attacked, or to just not be living up to what God may want you to be doing in that time. I think the way we guard our minds and guard our hearts and how we go forward as a creative is a way to not get so close to that line. Like, we don't have to toe the gray line as a Christian creative, but we can set healthy boundaries around what we're doing and how we are operating in those gifts. The same goes for me as a singer. I think, if anything, it's even more, because I don't know if you guys are taking note as to what's really going on in the culture, but as a singer, as a musical artist, there's a lot to contend against. And so, as a singer, and me being a singer, there's a lot of things that I know I have to set clear boundaries around. I can't toe the gray line as a Christian musical artist. And that's me just coming into that identity and really seeing myself as that. As a musical artist, I cannot toe that gray line, because I think music is just a whole different beast, in that the impact and influence of it is so strong. It's so strong, you know, and every believer knows why, right? Context, of course, is that the enemy, the devil, Lucifer, he worked in the music, you know, and in his disobedience and in him wanting to be a god of himself, wanting everyone to turn their worship, even God himself, wanting God to turn his worship onto Lucifer in order to gain praise for what he was doing. As a result, he got casted out of heaven and sent down to hell. And so there is a strong presence in music where the enemy finds his way and does his due in that area. And I know for me as a musical artist, I can't compromise. And I think that's something for everyone. You cannot compromise on what you believe. And I'll also throw a caveat that if you're not believing in truth, then I really encourage you to find out the truth. Because in that compromise, I'm not saying don't compromise with your own feelings and your own ideas of who God is and all of that stuff. Like, as a believer, I know the truth of who Jesus Christ is. I know the truth of God. I know the fact that God sent his only son to die on the cross for me and rose again in 3 days with all power and authority in his hand. And he did that so that my sin could be forgiven. He died and took all of my sin, all the sin he knew I'd get into, all the sin he knew you'd get into, and he let it die with him on the cross. And he rose up so that we can all have reconciliation with him. And not only that, be set free and allow us to then come back to him and live and have his will be done through our lives. And so I'm believing all those things, and I cannot compromise on how I use my voice I can't just sing anything. I can't just be out here creating anything. And I want to be very clear about that. There is no compromise. I can't go out here, do a secular album, then try to jump back into gospel or Christian contemporary and then go divvy out again. Where's the witness in that? Again, as a creative, as anyone who is allowing their art to speak for themselves, you have to be very conscious of what that message is, and that's in every facet. And so towing that gray line or towing that line will only make you doubt or question yourself. There's been some resources too that I've used in thinking about being a Christian, being a creative. And one great resource and great person that I follow is Omar Takori. He works with Think Media, which is really dope. And one of the things that I love about him is that he definitely shows the balance of being a creative but also being a believer. And the way he sets up, the way he kind of puts his content out there, it's like I'm a creative first, right? That was his main identity, right? I'm creative, and he was doing photography, I believe, when he started. And as his faith grew, then he started to show, okay, I'm a creative, but I'm also a Christian. And so the way I create content, why I create content changes. Because not only, like at this point, it's not only just creating art because I'm interested in it and because it's something that I like, but now it starts to turn into, this is an avenue, this is a medium that I'm using to share the gospel. Like, I think we need to understand that there's a reason for our giftings as Christian creatives. There's a reason for it. There's a purpose for it. And so the thing that jumps into my head, because lately I've been reading about it, is James 4, and just the thought of like not consuming something on your own lust. And it's not only lust in a sexual way, but it's like pretty much just having only my desires, it's only benefiting me. And so we have to understand that as a Christian creative, a lot of the things that we are able to do and what we do, we can't consume them on our own terms, our own, it can't just only benefit us. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because I'm getting paid for this thing that can't be the only benefit. Now, whatever I put out now, whatever I create because of that, because I'm getting paid to do it, I need that to produce something. And so I think as a Christian creative, that's something that is to be thought of and should be more in the forefront, because whatever my hands are doing, whatever I'm putting my hands to do, God, I want them to glorify you, because that's why you put it in me. You allowed me to use creativity to serve as this way of expressing, but also a way of worshiping. Like, I use what I can do to worship God, especially in my case, because God is the only reason why I have it. Like, God is the only reason why I can stand firm in my creative identity, because God gave it to me and he showed me where it was in me and what parts of me I can use as a mode of creativity. But like, in him showing me, it was for a purpose. It was for me to meet a need. It was for me to bridge a gap. It was there's a purpose in it. So as a Christian creative, we have to be very conscious of what we have in our hand, to produce, and who it serves. Wow. Like what I do serves someone, and the manner of what I do also determines how that service is received, reflected. It matters. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely a worthy conversation to continue to have, because as culture continues to dictate how things are going and how we should be presented in the world and how we should present ourselves and what a creative life looks like, or what life is supposed to look like. We have to be able to navigate that and stand strong and firm and anchored in how we show up in the world. Like, this world needs Christian creatives. We need content with a Christian perspective. We need to at least even consider the Christian perspective, just so that people can understand and see, like, it. This is the thing. The culture already is anti-God. I didn't want to go down this road, but we're here. The culture is anti-God. And so, as a Christian creative, whatever mode you're using to create content in whatever way, you have to consider that. You got to consider that the culture and the world perspective is anti-God. And so if you are a creative and you are trying to live your life as a believer, the way you create has to contradict that, so that you can kind of show. If you don't show it through your art, then why be a believer? Just to be frank. If who you are doesn't come out of your art, I don't know. You just have to kind of go back and kind of soul search, because it makes me think, well, then what is your art based in? And so these are just things. These are just thoughts that I think we should consider. And again, thank God that he's even having us think about these things, because now we can kind of look at ourselves and kind of just assess where we are. Like, all right, this is good to know. Like, this is just for consideration. Just consider these things. Just consider these things, because sometimes it's hard to see that you are compromising, and sometimes it's hard to see even where that line is. And so I think creating this community where Christian creatives can have some support, that's the whole purpose of becoming creative. And so thank you for joining me for this episode of Becoming Creative. I hope, again, that there was some value, there was some worth to me. My hope is that you will communicate with me. Let me know your thoughts on the topic. Let's talk more about it. I think this is a evolving topic, And we should talk more about it. And tell me, maybe in the comments, tell me your thoughts on the topic, but also what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think there's a line to toe? Do you think there are boundaries that you come into contact with as a Christian creative? Where do you see those boundaries? Have you compromised? I mean, we can talk honest on here. Have you compromised? And we can kind of serve as some support to help you not, or to kind of just talk through it. Let's just have a conversation. That's really what it is. Again, subscribe, thumbs up. Let me know that you guys are enjoying the content. And you guys can see me over on Instagram with some other, some of my ignorance. I try to keep on Instagram. So, check me out over there. Let's talk. And yeah, I love you guys. Jesus loves y'all. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.